morning, peeps! Welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, and Disembodied Hands, Quindy, Disembodied Beard, John, and I guess it's mostly Laura and Zachariah in the chat. Yo, you guys. Nobody's said yo since the 80s. I'm dating myself. Remember that? Remember when yo was the dude of the day? Like, dude, yo. What up? Yeah, there we go. There we go. Some throwback chat. More like evening. Yeah, Swasser. For our European wonderful people, it definitely evening. It is definitely allergy season here. Quindy, please take your allergy pill. Mine are acting up. I don't know what the trees are spewing into the air, but oh my god, it's toxic. Yeah. Yo, what's up? Yeah, there we go. What's going down, man? Oh, no. I'm going to have flashbacks now. What do they call post-traumatic 80s syndrome? PT8D. Oh, dear. It's called the 90s. Thank you, Wasser. So true. Oh, man. Oh, dear. That's really double funny for me because my husband was a 90s-er and I was an 80s-er. So we have basic differences in culture, upbringing. Yes, post-80s drama. And it's funny sometimes when I make fun of his 90s after he makes fun of my 80s. Alrighty. Hello, Sophie. No allergy. Yeah. When I lived in north of Baltimore, there were 6 blissful months where I did not have to take an allergy pill. I think it all got swept out to the ocean. So I'm gonna check actually today, guys. I want to kind of see if I can get at everything. If I can actually attach these wings, though I have to find the hole that I drilled first. Actually, I think I can get at everything. I really need to be able to get at the bag, the tassel there, and I can highlight that leather from here. Yeah, I think we're pretty good. All right, that's fair. So now I need glue. I have to make sure the lantern is at a... This really is kind of an odd angle because the one wing is out more, the other wing is upright more. They're kind of a little tilted on her back. Like, I wish they're more like that, but that's not how they actually fit into the socket. Here, let's get this in focus. The bone shadow is very transparent. It's a very, very transparent paint. Yeah, I mean, you probably just used other paint lines. There is a learning curve, Val, with Master Series. Yeah, although I think my wire is maybe a bit too long or I need to re-drill. Oh, my pin just came out. Uh-oh. Well then, if that's the way it's going to be... Oh, I need my side cutters were returned to the other room, and this was very short-sighted of me. 1 second while I fetch my side cutters in order to salvage the pin. Beginning to think that I need a new pair of super expensive high side cutters. Yes. Alrighty. Just gonna get in there and pull out that pin. Alrighty. Well, at least I know the pin was actually in there, but I still feel like the, so we're going to keep our little tiny pin there. We can always put it back in. With tweezers, although I don't have tweezers, because for some reason I keep always misplacing things that I need. Oh, hey, it's a whole pack of brushes. Hey, it's a whole pack of Da Vinci Maestro Series 10 size 1 brushes. Like 5 of them. Did I ever mention to you guys that I have a secret brush hoards stashed throughout the house and that I always find them at weird moments? Anyway, so okay. What I want to do is I want to re-drill that hole a little bit. I don't think you're using it wrong, Val. I think you're just using it differently, and so you just need to adjust to that. I mean, MSP on a wet palette is a very different beast than MSP on a well palette. So, I feel like, well, and your year break didn't do you any favors either, probably because you know, just as you were starting, and it was probably the timing of that break, like it was the fact that you were just starting to really get moving with some of your technique, and then you got frustrated and took a long break. Yeah, I really do need to drill this out a little bit better. I mean, that's essentially you quit before you had time to really assimilate any of that in your gut, right? Because it takes time to internalize this stuff. You quit while you were still experimenting. So essentially, you had it's like let's see, what is it? Is Diablo or it's Path of Exile, where you just get a level, but then if you die right away, you lose the level or something like that. I don't remember which game it was that used to do that, but it's like that. It's like you died and you went back to the beginning of the previous level instead of like the level you had just achieved. So I feel like this is normal, and I feel like it's fine, and you just need to paint. And honestly, it's just trial and error. If the paint doesn't work, you know, thinned at a certain level, then make it a little thicker or make it a little thinner. You can never make it more thick than straight out of the bottle, so keep in mind that Master Series is more fluid, and keep in mind it does have transparent colors. The Bone Shadow is a very transparent color, though, and the reason is that it uses the raw umber pigment, which we don't use a whole lot in MSP, because both of its transparency and because it tends to act a lot like black when it's added to colors, so it'll gray things out a bit. But it's also a very lovely color just to be used as like a clear shader. That's why the umber color that I put out a while ago, it got canceled because nobody bought it. But it was out in Bones for a while. There was an umber, and that was pretty much as pure of a raw umber as I could give people. But people didn't understand, like, nobody understands, like, how to use those transparent colors. Like, the vast majority of the hobby doesn't really understand how useful they are. Or they just don't paint like that, where it would be useful to them. So, the color got canceled. Chocolate also has caffeine in it. Twisted Noma, which is another reason. That's why I can't have too much chocolate, or my guts start to get upset. Yes, exactly, Turgeon. Never call yourself an idiot. Just slow down. And enjoy the process. Like, even if you try to paint something and your paint is acting a different way, you've learned something. I mean, this is where having a kind of a deliberate practice really will show. In other words, if you're going to overthink stuff, overthink it to the max and document everything. then you'll know. Like, then you'll have like evidence to support your hypotheses. I don't know if you have that kind of like deliberative mind where you like to kind of document. I always kind of did it on the fly, but I kind of like just made myself do it the same every time instead. Like, if you don't have a mind that loves to analyze and deliberate over stuff, which can make learning and figuring out what you did wrong hard, the best thing you can do is to always use the same paint consistency to get a feel for how colors are different. And that will get you there. It'll just take longer. Honestly, Arcane, start with a lighter blue than you think. Like, never start with something like Ultramarine Shadow. I get away with it on the mini we were on yesterday because I did like a white dry brush over the bottom, and now I'm working over the top of it, and I'll bring it back up. But if you're trying to like bring up highlights, say, on a deep blue, it works much better if you put a little bit of white into that blue first, because any pure blue without white in it is going to be really transparent. When you add white to build highlights, or you use a lighter blue which necessarily has white in it, that brush stroke is opaque because of the white. And so the opaque and transparent fight each other, and if you want like nice blends, you're better off starting in the mid and working down and then up. So start with something a little bit lighter, then use a lot of shading, maybe even a heavy wash to bring it down to the deep blue you want it, and highlight. Or highlight and then do the wash. I don't think there is too dark, Val. Like in 28mm, I don't know that there is too dark in shading. It depends on the effect you want. Remember, I go for naturalism, and so I do not like pop my darks as much as some painters do. With the exception of the dude I just showed on camera. But, I mean, that's something that if I did, it would change my style. But you shouldn't be trying necessarily to mimic my style. If you tend to go dark with your shades, that's actually a plus because it gives you more contrast. Now, if you don't like it because you don't have enough transitions between your darks and your mids, then that's another thing. It's a totally different thing. But we always have to yell at people in this hobby to go darker with their shadows. So if you already have the ability to do that, I don't know that I would unlearn that. Cool, Arcane. Yeah, it's difficult because I used to hate blue. Blue was my most hated color to paint. For that reason, I always wanted to start with these beautiful, deep, lovely, vibrant blues, and then when I tried to get a nice blend on the cloth or whatever, I just would see brushstrokes like out the yang, and that was the problem, though. I needed to start with a little bit of white in the color, and so now if I do something like this, I add a little white to it first, then I go down, then I go up, and it works a lot better. And you can always, because these are somewhat transparent, you can always build kind of a glaze, like a really lightweight wash, and glaze over the top to make everything come together as well. All right. So back to pinning Sophie. What glue do I have on my table, and is it still good? Oh, you always shade with a black. Well, but okay, so let's talk about that. Do I have anything that's like that? I don't know. Because I do shade down, but I wish I had my Sergio figure here. Yeah, I don't really have anything that's terrifically... I mean, it all depends how much... Okay, so what matters not is what color you use to shade, although if you do use black to shade, it is going to be more cartoony. But what matters is the amount of area your shadows take up. This guy has... I mean, I shade with brown liner. Like, I'm doing my lining with a near black here. But it's very, very small. And I'm not using it on something where I need it to be pale, like the skin. Like, the skin, I'm definitely going to a mid, right? But, like, I'm going to, like, a near black on the blade. I'm going to near black on these, my lines here. Because lining, remember, is just abbreviated shading. So it's super efficient shading. So, and I've got, like, definite black shadows in here. Like, black shadow. You know, I've got things that are black. I've got this coming down to a black. But look at how little an area this covers. Like, when you look at my shadow here... It's very small, and it's kept up here. I haven't really taken it down here because I want the light down here, right? So a lot of the time, it's not the color you're using to shade, because, I mean, I use brown liner to shade in many cases, and I always use it for lining, which is your super hyper abbreviated shading, but I don't let it go very far, right? I don't let it bleed into a lot of other stuff. I don't put real heavy shadows down. If I'm going to use a heavier shadow, I'm going to keep it like a darker, like more muted purple down here. I'm going to keep it pure sticks purple plus brown liner. I'm not going to, take it up. So it's less the color you're using and more the amount of area you allow that color to have. So my work looks like it does because I keep my shading pretty constricted. I live more in the mids and lights on my work. So, but I'm like different, right? If you look at Luca's work, he has a lot of darks in his pieces, right? He has a very high contrast style. It's a style. So it's not wrong or right. It's a style. If you don't like that style, try shrinking instead of like necessarily changing what you do for shading, but shrink the amount of area it takes up. Go like blend out of it faster, essentially. You leave your black, your near black or your black, but then, go right into that purple or that green or that blue, bring it up from there. And make those shadows smaller. All right, so really what you're having trouble with is choosing a transition between things, right? The ebony to skin to swarthy flesh is just too big of a jump. And you could have even made that work as far as the jump if the colors had been right. So in skin tones, you almost never want to shade with something. I told you this before about the swarthy flesh and the ebony skin. The problem isn't even the amount of like value between those that you've got. It's that the ebony has so much black in it. So yeah, some colors are going to bite you like that. But like if you were doing that with like using Nightmare Black to shade a blue is fine. Like there's no problem with that. It's okay. It's just going to give you high contrast. If you don't want high contrast, that's another thing. So you got to ask yourself here, and I recognize a lot of things where you're labeling a lot of things as bad, but I'm not sure they are, Val. There's a particular personality type that really fears being bad at stuff. Okay, I am that person, actually. I have that personality type. And you got to watch that because like when something doesn't work, it doesn't mean that it's a bad choice or that you are bad or that the model is bad or that your choice is bad. It just means it didn't work for some reason. And that is a reason to discover there, and that can enlighten you, right? Ebony flesh, it's not that it was, yes, it was that it was black and you were mixing it into a color with a lot of yellow, right? Any skin tone has a lot of yellow. You don't want black generally, unless you're working with a very dark skin tone. Then you do want that black. That's why that ebony flesh exists, right? Yeah, a lot of us are like, and it's our fear, right? We don't want to be shown to be a bad person or be bad at what we're doing. We really like it. It really lives in us, right? It's the biggest nasty, but that's a problem because it can make us, when we make a mistake, it can cause us to label that as bad, and immediately we will not learn from that mistake because we've labeled it. We're trying to back off from that so fast we don't want to even look at it, right? Oh, it's bad. But then you're not going to learn. Like you haven't given yourself the room to accept that mistake as actually a good thing and not bad. It's not bad at all. Just look at it. Figure out why it didn't work. You've learned something. If you figure out why, the core of why, and in the skin tone case, the core of why is that black added to a yellow-based skin tone isn't going to look very good. It's going to go very ashy. So unless you're going for Vampire Barbarian, who I just showed, and I wanted an ashy skin tone, that's a problem, right? But it's not necessarily, like, in that case, it's not necessarily the range of values. It's actually the pigments that are reacting badly with each other and not looking great. And skin tones, as I did say, like, yes, in skin tones, you generally don't want high drama. Like, I go for more of a subtle look. But there are people out there, like Sergio, who goes for, like, crazy high drama skin tones and makes them work. And the reason they work is lighting. And I wish I had my Sergio. I don't know where I stuffed my Sergio class model. Damn it. If I knew it, let me see if I can find an example real quick. One second. I'm going to try to just find some stuff. See if I can find a good example. Gallery. Yeah, okay. So Sergio is super high contrast. He's absolutely taking those shadows down to near black, even to possibly black. Yes, exactly, Arcane. Yep. Yeah, exactly. But he is using really, really black shadows. Absolutely he is on all of this dwarf. Hold on. Let's see if I can get that plus sign. There we go. And it's his style. There's nothing wrong with it, right? Like, it's his style to do this. One thing to note is that he's mostly, though, he's using those shadows, those near black shadows, away from the light. So up here on top, because Sergio's got a very good grasp of lighting. So where things are pointed upward, you won't see that near black, unless it's in a tiny area. As things move downward, away from the light, that's where you see all those black shadows. So keep in mind that, like, oh, I love that piece. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it so much. Let's see. But on skin tones, okay, this is new. This is kind of nudity. So we're going to kind of put the hands over here. But on skin tones, he doesn't go to the black, right? He doesn't go to the black on skin tones. He'll go, let's see if I can cover up just strategically. There. So he'll go like to a warm shadow on the jawline, but he won't go to black on a fair skin tone. No, he's doing, okay, and this is a style, Val. This is what I said before. I swear I've said this on stream before with you, but maybe not. When you're working on bigger figures, lining becomes usually artificial looking, and so a lot of people then will just shade by contrast. They will darken their shadows and put them next to a lighter highlight. So yeah, strategic thumb modesty. I think I like kind of screwed up there. Hopefully Twitch won't flag us for that. I was trying to find something with a decent skin tone that didn't have a black. But like, okay, let's see here. So let's see if I can find can I get closer to Yoda here? All right. So he is lining, but then he's shading out from it. See? So he's adding contrast where the lining is, but he's blending it outward, except that hard shadow right there, right? This is Yoda. Hi. Hi, says Yoda. So notice there are no blacks, except like maybe a tiny bit around the nose to define it, and the eyeshadows, right? And that's to bring in contrast. Looking for examples. I was looking for a really muscly example. There we go. So one of his ogres. So, but he's working those really extreme darks here because he's trying to say there's a very bright light source coming from above. And this is more like what Luca does, except Luca's even more dramatic with it. So he's bringing in those super darks. And you can see the lining. There's lining right here where he needs it. And the reason there's lining right there is he needs like a break between this color of the skin and this NMM, which are otherwise very close in color and in value. So he's lining there to create those micro shadows, maybe to suggest that the skin is bulging out a little bit, right? But so how you use lining, whether you use it or whether you just shade, is like a very individual thing. Okay, so this is the class model. It's not my paint job, it's his, but But again, he taught us how to do this kind of over-accentuated, really, really near black shading on skin. Again, he's doing an unnatural skin tone, right? But, so it's not, let's see about these. I'm trying to find some examples that show you that he's using everything. So you can see the lining where he needs it. Where we've got values that are close to each other is where he's using that micro lining. You know, otherwise he's just using shading. He's putting a shadow behind this. It's broader than a line, right? But this is also a 75mm model. Yeah, it's good. I wouldn't want to traumatize SSC. But do you see what I'm saying there, Val? Like, it's lining, whether you use lining or just shading to separate out your areas, usually depends on what colors you're putting next to each other, right? Like here on the elf, he's not using lining, he's using a deep shadow, right? So he's just essentially saying, light's coming from up here, I can put a deep shadow here to separate this green from this fur. But here, he's having to put some lining in. You can see the line there, there, because all of this is very close in value, so he's forced to use lining around these little guys, forced to use lining in order to bring out the details. But he tends to prefer to do a more natural shading effect with a strong light source. And this is all just, and some of these areas, like down near the feet, he's letting it just kind of go without lining. He's using, instead, see how he's doing here? He's using a dark green shadow here, reflecting the groundwork, and he's using the highlights on the NMM instead of using line shadows until he gets down here. Then he's got a little bit of a line shadow there. So you can, the point is here, styles, right? His style is like totally different from mine, which is why I took a class with him, because I wanted to like learn how to think about this style. So here, again, he's using shadows instead of lining, but he's still using lining around the necklace, right? Because he needs it there to make that stand out. So it's up to you which way you go or how much of each or both you use. There are people who really hate lining and just try to create the shadows like more naturally to blend them in. Trying to think. I think that's about all we needed really as far as what I wanted to show you guys. I think that's... trying to see, just doing a quick scroll forward to see if I've got any good examples. Here we go. Hold on. Give me this example. There we go. And she's got a bikini on, so we can totally show her. So here's a skin tone. It's a fairy. He goes dark, and he does use lining. You can see it. But it's pretty, like, he keeps his lines super fine. The skin tones, though, never go to black. Right? He's using, and this is very Luca, where he's using a hyper-saturated skin tone, right? He does go to near black on the areas of dark shadow where it's going to be an occlusion shadow, where where the light is directly being blocked by a leg. Yes, shading and lining perform the same function. So whether you want to just use a line or whether you want to actually shade, which he kind of is doing there in the spot of that hip, right? He's actually bringing the black of the liner up just a tiny bit, but he doesn't want to mute out his skin tone, and so he's essentially trying to avoid as much as he can. And I wouldn't be surprised to learn if that was really just a very dark purple, right? Down here, yeah, probably a dark purple black or near black, right? So, yeah, so, and this is a bigger model as well. I think 75mm. I'll show you guys the whole piece. It's really nice. And what he's doing, by the way, is with the light on the flower, with the purples and reds, he's reflecting that up onto the skin. That's why she's got that deep purple red shadow, which is very, very cool. But, so skin tones, if you're dealing with smooth skin, you usually don't use the black. But when you're dealing with heavy musculature or a very bright light source, like on those ogres, then you're dealing more with, like, putting in some really near black shadows. So, when I took my class with Sergio, he actually taught us to cover over all of the black primer, but we covered it over with something that was extremely near to black. So if we were doing like, an orangey skin tone, we'd be using an extremely dark brown instead of it. So he does cover over all of the black, the actual black, but he uses very near black shadows. Yes, Victoria is a tiny person. She's a wonderful tiny person, though. Anyway, so hopefully that kind of illustrates. It's a style thing. There's not a right, there's not a wrong, there's not a bad, there's not a good. It's what you like. It's what you want to try to paint like. So it's cool to try to emulate my style if you like it. But understand also, like, I used to tell this to people. I'm going to try to put these wings on. Hold on. I'm trying to get my glue to come out. There, some glue. This one is almost done, I think, this glue. But I used to tell people back in the day when I was competing in Golden Demon, there were a couple of people who were really scared of teaching. They were afraid that if they taught, I used a bit too much glue. If they taught, people were going to like steal their ability or their style, right? And I always told them that was the stupidest thing on earth, because I could tell them from my experience in art school that even if they held the brush for their students, it would never be the same. They would never be able to truly duplicate that person's style. I'm just situating the pin with my pliers here. I think I'm going to need it closer to the tip. I might need to just use a fresh pin. Luckily, the gel glue takes a while to set up, so I have some time to screw around. Not a ton of time though. There we go. Yeah, I'm going to have to do it the other way around. Other way around, Anne. Yeah, I might need a new pen. I might need to clean this glue out. The pin coming out sometimes is just like, sometimes you just have to start fresh. There we go. Get that pin in there. I'm going to cut off a little bit of it because it was just not going fully into the hole. But yeah, so my point here is that even if you strive to emulate my style, you won't be like perfect about it, right? You're going to have points where you diverge. And that's just because it's like, it's your style, right? Your style and my style are not going to be absolutely perfect with, like, you won't be able to duplicate it 100%. Because you're not me. Aha, there we go. Yeah, she's definitely got her one wing up higher because of the lantern. All right, well, that at least puts those together, and they should glue. Pretty solid. I don't think Corporea's got a full-time job. She works in the medical field. I think she's a midwife. So I don't think she does. She mostly is just a Reaper staff painter, and she competes regularly at ReaperCon, so the best place to run into her is ReaperCon. She used to post a lot on the forums. I don't know if she still does, but she's all right. Now that we've got the wings on, I'm going to go and get that book highlighted. I'm going to grab my creamy ivory and Osirian sand, do kind of a mix, and I think I used desert sand a little bit, so yeah. But yeah, so she's got a quote, you know, a job that keeps her very busy that she absolutely loves, so she doesn't like stream or do that kind of thing. She doesn't need to. She's a fantastic person. Okay, I'm going to do 1 drop of desert sand, 2 drops of creamy ivory, and probably should just go with that. I think that's what I used there, and drop the Osirian sand. No Osirian sand today. Sorry, Osirian sand. We use the desert sand, I'm pretty sure, for that base coat. I'm getting to like that a lot on creamy type stuff. ReaperCon is over the Labor Day weekend in the USA, which is the end of August, beginning of September. The exact dates are up on the web, so if you just Google ReaperCon dates 2024, you will get them. Yeah, there we go. Zachariah with the answer. Yeah, she's just a generally, like, awesome, joyful person. She's super supportive. Yeah, I'm just going to go with that for now and see. I'm actually going to drop a little bit more water in this because the creamy ivory has a lot of white pigment in it. A lot of. So what we've got is 2 drops of creamy ivory, 1 drop of desert sand. It's going to go kind of make it a little darker, a little richer. Really thin. It won't be thin enough to really layer, though, because it's got so much white. Oh, that's a good point. Sweet. I forgot you could sort by artist for a ReaperCon. Oh yeah, there might be something in virtual YouTube. I don't remember if she did a virtual ReaperCon. I don't remember if she did stuff during that time since she was a healthcare professional. Oh, she did a class on crystals. Okay, great. Super. So, 2 drops of creamy ivory and 1 desert sand and 2 drops of white doesn't even give us a 1-to-1. So with a very pale or with a very paint with a lot of white in it, it's not going to give us real blends, right? We're going to be able to see the brush strokes. The only reason we're getting this good of a blend is that desert sand is like the color that this is. And since I mixed a little bit in, it brought the overall color of my highlight closer to the base coat. So I'm seeing brush strokes, but I'm not seeing them as bad as I might. But I don't mind having a bit of a texture on paper. Because they're often what's one. But see how it's getting grainy and chalky? That is like a sign that I need to go one way or the other with it. I think I'm going to go a little thicker and add another drop of desert sand to it. Just going to darken it just a little bit. So I'm also going to thicken it up a little bit. Chalkiness is usually due to like you've got the wrong consistency. You need to either go thinner and build it up forever, or you need to go thicker, which is what I'm going to do, bring it closer to your base. They are, just so you know, Arcane Void though, they are the same every year. Like Reaper has been on the Labor Day weekend every year for the last many years. So what that means is, although you may not be able to make it this year, you can look at next year. Unless you eternally have something that crops up on Labor Day weekend, then it's just a problem. But that's the way we tend to pre-reserve the... Through 2025, it'll be the same? Okay. Yeah, so... So when I've got my paint a little thicker and a little closer to the base color that I used, I can get it a little bit smoother, not as streaky. Now I'm going to actually take a little bit of that, thin it way down and see what I can do. Right, yeah. Even if the holiday is before school starts? Or if it's I guess if it's at the start of school, then yeah, it's going to be very awkward. I could see that. Maybe you'll have to get permission to go without her. I don't know if she'd be in for that or not. So now I've thinned it a bit, and I'm kind of going over the edge of these two areas just to blend in the line that I've got there. Bye, Twisted Oma. Been renewed for 2. I mean, the best you could do is to say, hey, honey, this is really awkward for both of us, but I'd really like to go to this con. And what are your thoughts on it, right? And if she's very sad that you would abandon her to go to a con that she can't go to, then that's fair. But if she's like, well, I can't go to it because of school, but I don't mind if you go to it, then great. I mean, I used to do that. David and I don't do it as much, but I totally do that. Like, there are things I go to that are just awkward for him or that he doesn't have as much interest in, and he's just cool with me going. All right, so we've got a little bit of a blend there. What I'm going to do is I think I used some Shield Brown here. I'm going to grab that Shield Brown and I'm going to glaze it a bit. Mostly my problem with this with highlighting these pages right now is that I'm trying to do it fast, and so it's going fast can just get you kind of a less great result. So the best thing you can do if you're trying to do a blend is to kind of relax and go, no, back off, do a thing. You don't think she'd mind? Yeah. Ah, that's cool, Carrie. Right, whether you want to go alone. Yep. Well, I mean, Reaper Con is a super friendly con, so it's one of the better ones, I think. It's full of a bunch of people sitting around at tables painting all day and taking breaks to go to classes and then playing board games at night or sitting around the fire pit. It's a very, very low-key con. So I'm doing a glaze with Shield Brown over the top of this. I'm not making it pool, I'm just brushing it. And see how much that glaze helps. Like right away it's blending in that line a lot better than I could have done on my own without making a ton of that means road trip, Shadow Raven. Honestly, I wouldn't mind the road trip, except that I had Kiki with me last time. The 4-day road trip by itself is not a big deal. The 4-day road trip while juggling the dog is a big deal. Won't be doing that again. Yeah, although to be fair, I have to miss a lot of work streams, so. Uh-huh. Nice Arcade Void. Yeah, our factory is changed depending on how long ago that was. Things have changed. So as you can see, the glazing and then relayering is giving me a better result. Now when I bring this, the blend lines in, they're much more smooth looking. I still get a little bit of that demarcation line, which I can either take my very thin white to try to fuzz over. Yeah, I can do that. 2016, okay, yeah. Yep, so you were there when I was there. If you took the factory tour, you probably got to see the paint department. That was where I worked. Well, Reaper, I mean, if you're calling Denton a city, or if you mean, you can avoid cities on the way, though. You can always just take the highways around them. So there we go. So now I've got a pretty good blend. Like, honestly, if you look at it, it looks pretty good. Like, you have to zoom in really a lot, and then you can really attribute this darker shadow here to the shadow from her arm. So let's do that on the other side. Yep. Yeah, usually, I was going through a bit of surgery back then, so it would depend, but I would assume I was there most of the time. 2016 was the year they finally managed to fix me, but I think I had at least 2 surgeries that year. It was at the tail end of a dark time. So again, when you start out, you can see how much it is. Now here I could do some wet blending. I can bring in my my shield brown, and I can fudge it by just wet blending. Let me bring in a little bit more shield brown. And essentially, this is why I've gone mostly to wet blending, by the way, and away from layering my initial blends, as that gives me a much better start, doesn't it? Once you have wet blending down, assuming your climate will allow it, sometimes super arid places you have trouble with it. I did a wet blend. I started with big dabs, and then I just took my shield brown and just mixed it in, then mixed a little bit more in, then mixed a little bit more in, and stretched out my highlight. And now I can use layering over the top of what I've got here. And it's still pretty thick, so I'm going to have to add some water to that paint. It's pretty arid here lately, so... Yeah, I mean, I'll go back to what I say about it not being a necessary. Like, you could just layer in glaze like I did over here, right? But when I did the wet blending, suddenly it all came together a lot faster, right? So if you're impatient, wet blending is a good tool to pick up. And then, got all this, I need to blend in that edge. Take off the excess fluid there. Grab a little bit of my shield brown. Do kind of a sideways blend here. Grab a little bit more of this paint. Yeah, so actually you've got a good climate for wet blending, Kuro. The key for you then is to use actually less paint than you might think. Because if you've got a lot of humidity, the paint will stay wet longer, and if you add too much, then you're kind of working with pools that are going to start to skin over at varying rates. It's not ideal. Yeah, I mean, I was a layerer for ages because I liked the control. And I still am a layerer, but lately it's like the wet blending foo has gotten very strong in me. I used to struggle with it. And layering that up. Anybody who thinks that, like, sunny days are stereotypical Scotland has not listened to Chronica for the last, like, umpteen zillion days she spent on our stream. Or if you mean, like, idealized Scotland. Like, idealized Ireland and Scotland. The sun is shining. There was just rain, though, because there's always a rainbow, right, in those idyllic, envisioned. I'm going to do a different brush stroke. So before I was doing all across, right? So now I'm doing vertical. Doing that with a very thin version of this paint allows me to confuse the eye and create a blend. So when you start out going one way with your brush stroke, and then you go, essentially you're cross hatching with really thin paint, but because the paint is so thin, the lines don't really show. And so instead you get that illusion of a blend. We've got a little bit of blotchiness there. We can work on that. There's only, oh, I see. pretty much I do wet blending whenever I feel like it's gonna like accelerate or me to where I want to be. I'm much more likely to wet blend in the beginning stages. Wet blend, but I also can wet blend to when I'm adjusting like I am now. And it's okay if you get a little bit of a cloudy look, because that can be, we can add some discoloration along these pages to show the age of the book. Oh, I haven't checked my emails today. I've got a ton to do today. I have, my PDF is almost done for the Patreon, and my companion PDF, and then I've actually got my writing coaching at noon with Becca. So that'll be exciting. She can enlighten me on my own behavior, and then I'll go, Doe, why didn't I think of that? Actually, I learned a lot. I got a book a while ago for you, Kerniko, called How to Write a Sweet Romance, a swoon-worthy sweet romance novel. And I was reading it last night just because I'd finished my previous book, and I was like, you know what, I should look into this book. And it actually, it was very useful for talking about physical emotional escalation. So it was actually a really kind of a cool book. And there's apparently a thing called I should check really quick. But I think it's called an emotion thesaurus of emotions or something like that, or emotional thesaurus. One second, let me check. Yeah, emotional thesaurus for writers. The emotion thesaurus. There it is. The emotion thesaurus. And what it does is it essentially breaks down like different emotions and ties them to certain physical like reactions that your body has, like physiological reactions that your body actually has when it's got those emotions. Oh, I've been interested in trying my hand at romance for a while, Kerniko. Plus, that was only Kindle Unlimited, so it was free to read. Free. I read a fair amount on KU. But no, I mean, I thought about trying my hand at romance for a while. Like, it wouldn't, I just don't know if it's like, it would be different for me, but it might help my other writing. Like, that's the thing, is that sometimes, like, taking up a different, like, type of book or genre can really teach you a bit. That's why I decided to read this book. So I'm just doing I've got a very small amount of paint on my brush, and the pages are sculpted here, so I'm able to just use the edge of my brush to pick up what's already sculpted. Yes, as long as I look at all the pages so the author gets paid. Yes, I'm reading my way through. The thing is, like this writer's style is very different from the romance I would write. She's very much a write-to-market writer, but her advice is still useful in many things, and the emotion thesaurus was something I had no idea existed. And that could be useful for any genre. Because, I mean, well, especially adventure fantasy like I do. There's a lot of crazy stuff happening, and the character's going to have, like, you know, a lot of emotion, a lot of feels, and the feels are going to make them do things and feel things. So, now I do need some lining or a shadow, probably a shadow in here. Let's grab a little bit of rich indigo and blue liner. Actually, let's do brown liner. I do tend to like to use brown liner better. I find it has a more natural shadow, but that's a personal preference. But yeah, so I feel like actually I may learn quite a bit from this book. There isn't a lot of romance in Bear Kings. I'm going to do 1 drop of the rich indigo that I used here, and I'm going to actually drop just 1 drop of brown liner into it and see what happens. If it can create a shadow that I would like for that area. I was using black indigo down here, but there's like going to be warm light coming up off that book, so I'm going to change just a little bit. But yeah, my biggest thing with romance is, and this is kind of a question I want to see for myself, is will I be able to write something where the main storyline is all about the character's relationship? Because usually I far prefer to write things where the main storyline is about all of the cool magic and adventure, and any romance is tertiary. Like, I am much more a character development writer than I'm a romance writer, but at the same time, it's a challenge. And it could certainly inform some of my emotion in my other writing, so I'm like, I'll try it just for fun. But you know me, Kuro, the thing is, if I'm going to try this, what am I going to do? I'm going to try to make it good and do it right? Because that's me. That's my thing. And to do that, I want to actually learn about it. I don't just want to like run in and try to write a romance novel when I've got no clue what I'm doing. Oh, synthetic brushes in the Chimera Chaos, huh? So now I'm going to paint this color, which actually turned into kind of a near black, just in here in the shadow, so that I can create more drama here between the book and the dress. Darken down that area. Oh, axe murderers, axe murderers. No barking in Mama's office. Settle down now. Good girl. Nope, I'm not going to pet you when you sat here and barked in my office. I do not appreciate barking in my office. Yes, Kiki is convinced there are axe murderers. Her dog walker came yesterday, and she actually did. She acclimated to him a lot faster. He became a non-axe murderer much quicker. So I think we're going to have to book him like every month that he isn't actually like engaged to take care of her for something, just so she can remember who he is. So now I've got those shadows in there. I'm going to put a little bit darker. Maybe just grab actually that brown liner really in and get some pure brown liner out here. That is something that you will develop over time, Val. And the only way to get a style is to iterate, is to paint a lot of models. As you do that, you learn what techniques you like, what type of brushstroke you like, what kind of paint you like, what colors you like, what techniques draw you in. And you start using those more than others. And one day you will walk back to your painting table and stop and look at your stuff and realize, holy crap, I've got a style. That's exactly how it happened to me. So it happens organically. And it usually, I mean, what I advise, and this is why I didn't want you to get too stuck into my style, but what I tell people is very useful is trying to duplicate a number of styles. So painters whose work you really enjoy but whose styles are very different from you, try to get one of the models that they have painted that you have a good picture of their paint job and try to duplicate it. Try to just paint along using their finished piece as a guide where to put your shadows and highlights and how they're doing their colors. That's why you need a good picture, because you need to be able to zoom in on it like I was doing with those Sergio pieces. And even if you're scared of the techniques, you can still look at a sword and paint it like you would, using your techniques, but trying to duplicate what that artist did. You're going to learn more that way than I think in any other way. And you're going to expose yourself to different styles. And the more styles you expose yourself to, the more you're going to be able to say, I like this, I don't like this, I like this, I don't like this, you know. The other way to do that is, of course, to do what I did and take classes with other painters, but it's not always possible to take those classes. A lot of the Europeans will come over sometimes, but they'll just do like 3 or 4 classes in some major cities, and you may not be able to get to one. Richard. Yeah. If Val starts like you know, like mass painting giant armies of old Marauder figures, Richard, then we'll stop him. Okay. Yeah, yeah. Right. Yeah, So Flat. If So Flat has like quote unquote the real artist pigments, then yeah, they're not. Cats drinking paint water. Not compatible. I like the So Flat, but honestly, Kuro, I don't think like I mean it's comparable. Like it's a decent paint. It's not a miracle paint, so I mean you don't need it. All right, so now we've got a nice shadow in there. You can see that this is much lighter. We still need to actually bring in more highlights on this. But now the book is got that nice shadow there, so things look much more balanced. So, and that the effect of making that book lighter is, of course, that we've got, you know, more light up here, which is the more important part of the figure. And I do want to block in this lantern a bit because I feel like we need that. Yeah. All right, so first I'm going to paint this. Actually, I think I'm going to use the indigo brown mixture I just did and turn it into a dark blue gray for the lantern. Because that way I'll be using colors I already used on the figure, even if they're mixed together. So I'm going to take that dark blue gray or dark purpley color and I'm going to mix it. All right, I'm going to put a little bit more indigo into it. And using kind of some indigo to make this gray for the lantern is going to give us a place where the indigo kind of carries up further on the model, even though it's subtle. There we go. That's a pretty color. But yeah, I'll have to take a look at that chaos. I'm sure I'll get a ping in my mail folder. I'm going to bring this in. I'm going to paint the whole thing in this blue-gray first. I'll be shading it too, and I'll be bringing in those little holes where the light can come out of. But I'm going to just first start out by painting it all in one color. Infinity still exists. Last I checked, Kuro paints Infinity models. But it's hard to find people to play with for that game. Yes, the minis are very fiddly. And their audience wants them to stay in metal, which is not going to help. They should probably just ignore their audience and start producing some stuff in Siocast. And see if the unspoken audience that's not complaining is the bigger of the two. So is the danger. They did? They went to Siocast? Oh, their Siocast isn't great? That's too bad. I wonder if it is because it's so the sculpts are so fiddly. Because Siocast itself is a very good system, but maybe not for super thin stuff. I don't know. Why is it not great? Is it that it's too fragile? I talked to them at Adepticon 3 or 4 years ago about it, and they said at that time that they would like to go to Sidecast, but that their audience was really complaining about it and didn't want it and wanted them to stay metal. But I'm surprised if the Sidecast isn't good, because I mean the system itself is fully capable of those models, I would think. I'm going to start giving a little bit of shadows in here. Oh, miscast parts not lining up. It's kind of gummy. I see. Right. Understood. This is Sidecast we're working on right now. It is a little bendy. I could see. But then, if I'm understanding you, then it's only as a problem with like specific types of models. Although I guess they've got a fair number of those. Maybe the answer is to do what Privateer Press did and like, you know, stay, you know, do Sidecast for some stuff, resin for other stuff, or whatever, or metal for some stuff. I'm going to use my brown liner to block in these little window panes. Yeah. I get the feeling that your cats are like definitely chaotic neutral. Cornico. Like they appear to be chaos beasts. They haven't dialed in stuff. Yeah, that's too bad. Yeah, but that, yeah, I mean, that's the thing is that with Reaper, Kevin is like a perfectionist and he works hard to understand how stuff works and to minimize imperfections. I mean, he was our master mold maker before he moved over to the Sidecast department. So, I mean, a lot of the advances that Reaper made in molds are Kevin advances. So we haven't. I've always thought that Kevin is like Reaper's secret weapon. Like he's one of the things that Reaper has that nobody else has. He would never like put that emphasis on himself because he's a modest kind of guy, but I really feel like that. I have felt like that for a long time. Because if something isn't working, like Kevin takes it personally and sets out to figure out why. All right, so we've got some shadows in here. We brought a bit of our dark back in. We still got some nice lighter touches. I feel like you need like an airlock to like, you know, the room that you paint in. You need to just like totally triple lock all the doors. They probably would figure out how to open them. Your cats are pretty crazy beasts. Okay, so now let's get those little... Yes. Yeah, Ed did a lot of work on that, Hyper, when he was still around. Ed was really good at that. Communication. Yep. Yeah, that sounds likely. If you're right, and Ed talked to them to adjust stuff. Although I'm surprised that they didn't change it for other. Like if it demonstrably does a little better. I don't know. I don't know what all is involved in that. My cat even tried to open round handle doors by biting it and trying to twist. That was Panther, Mama-san's son. Well, whatever Reaper's mix is, folks, I like it. Because this mini is really nice. Alright, so I mixed up some pure white. I'm going 4-1. Some people use different regrind material mixes. Ah! Thanks, Reaper Miniatures. I thought you would know something about it, John. Yeah, regrind material mixes and stuff. Yeah, I could see that. Everybody got their own little thing going on. So Siocast will not be. So it is the machines that are the consistent thing, and the materials and the regrind mixes are the difference. That makes sense. I'm going to go in and I'm going to block in where the light is going to be coming out of these little apertures. And if I blur off a little bit, like I get a little bit over on the strut, like I kind of did there, it's okay. I'll just correct it. I'll just do them all and then correct it. So I'll do a row and then I'll touch them up. I probably could have gone even a little thicker with my white. And we're putting this white in so that after we've got it in, we can paint over it with yellow and it'll really show up like it's glowing. Siorez hard material after working our way through the older stuff, plus the molds are just getting better and better as I learn the material. Oh, you're doing it. Oh, okay. So John, I should be giving John credit. I didn't know that you were working in the sidecast now, John. That was my fault for not taking the Reaper tour recently and not knowing where you were. All the credit to John then, folks. Cred to John, cred to John. Refocus cred. Yeah, but compliment still stands. It's like, I feel like at Reaper, especially because so many of us are kind of like problem solvers and we're more independent thinkers in a lot of cases, that helps when problems come up. That was a better row. I don't have to touch that one up. Now this one right back here is kind of touchy because it's right by the wing. And I don't mind if I get a little bit on the wing at that point because there's probably going to be a little bit of light on the wing anyway there. So I'm going to keep those touches there to remind myself that if there's OSL anywhere, it's going to be here right on the wing. Well, you don't know. Yeah, you don't know like what their company structure is like or their employees. Understand that Reaper is an odd duck, you guys. For many of us, like Ed preferred independent thinkers. He liked to hire alphas. People who would like who when you give them autonomy will use it, right? Like, and that's not what a lot of companies do. But what it means is that you're more likely to have someone who is going to, you know, have the ability and care enough to make adjustments and fix things. Well, especially if the new material isn't very good, I don't blame their fan base for rocketing like very strongly in the metal direction. Metal is definitely not my favorite these days. Resin is still my favorite. Resin has been my favorite for a while. Like, resin gives me like the flexibility and the softness to work with as far as cleanup goes, but still like is a great material to hold detail. And the more flexible resins are a little bit more durable than the old really super hard porcelain resins, where the only issue is really the dust that you have to make sure not to inhale. I still find resin to be the easiest to clean up though. So we've got our little lights, our little light spots. We'll continue to work around here. I use a knife for a lot of my resin work for the starting and clippers, so it's not, I don't have to wear a mask at that point. And I use a sheet of paper underneath my work surface, so it's really easy to just pull that up and empty it into the trash or get rid of it entirely. Yeah, I've just learned some workarounds over the years to make dealing with the resin a little easier. And often, instead of filing it at all, I will just take green stuff to correct anything. Go the additive approach instead of the subtractive approach where I can. I have some definite metal people in the chat, I see. I struggle with metal because it's, these days, because it's so high, and you gotta define what you mean by good metal, right? Because metal is so hard nowadays because it's so high tin content, because so many places have dropped the lead content out, which is good, and yet it also makes the metal harder to work with. Right, because lead always made the metal a little softer. It also caused fewer mold lines. Downside was it was more fragile, but it was much easier to clean up, easier to pin. I find the very, very hard metal very hard to work with. Yes, that's true. That's true. But that's like something that's a learning curve for sculptors, right? To figure out, oh, this looks beautiful, but it's super fragile. Yeah, I think I ordered one metal model in my latest batch because it was the only way to get one of the lizard men I wanted to paint for you guys. And I looked at it and I was just kind of like, no. But I'll deal with it. We do metal on here every once in a while. All right, got all of our little windows in. That's for Hyper Bunny. I like 3D printer resin too. Yeah. Between players and cats, Kuro, it's a wonder any of your models survive. Do a little bit of candlelight yellow here for the light. I'm going to put just a little bit of white into it. I want it to go a little bit lighter. But I'm also thinning it, so it's going to let the light show through, the white show through a little bit. And if I keep the yellow thin, then even if I hit the sides of the lantern a little bit, it's really not going to color them, because it'll be too weak. I don't want a super strong yellow light here. Yeah, it used to be that the metal was better than the resin for stuff, but lately and I like that the models aren't as heavy, because they're much more likely to break when they're heavy if they fall. So it depends. I like the Siocast because it's a lot less prone to breakage when I drop it. And I like 3D print resin for the detail. And I also just like the surface on it, to be fair. Yeah. Yeah, I just green stuff for that now. Hyper Bunny, I agree. I don't like those things either. Yeah, and if you paint older models, honestly, it's less likely that you'll actually be awarded unless you have an amazing paint job on it. In my I don't think they never say it out loud, but they're usually looking for models that they can actively market. So I've seen people do a conversion with an old model and then like adding parts from a new one. Some of that yellow in there. The problem with these little lanterns is that with these little gaps, like this tiny lantern, I would much rather any day have this than that. You can see how much the really thick grid makes it a lot less possible to do this. I think this is the best lantern I painted for a very long time, but I'm not going to be able to duplicate that here. There's too much metal. Oh, Olden Demon. Ah, I didn't realize that, Hyper Bunny. That's cool that they have that. I didn't know that it was a thing. Probably because I'm not a big fan of the older models. I actually think the newer GW models are some of the best stuff they've done. There's a couple older models I have some nostalgia for. But it's just that. But yeah, so I really don't feel, because of the heavy cross guards and stuff, cross lattice on this lantern, I really don't feel like I can do the glowing effect as nicely as the other one. So the way that it works is you don't have to read the whole book, but you do read, you know, for every page you read, we get a certain, like, tiny amount of money. But I don't think it counts. It does not count their extra ad stuff. This is why, actually, I put my author's note in as a chapter instead of a back matter, because then it'll actually get read. Because otherwise their star rating and their like stuff pops up right at the end of the book. So my author's note is an actual chapter, so that the you know, you've read this book, yada yada, now rate it, etc. pops up after. So I think they only pay for pages you actually put in the book. Don't quote me on that, but I think so. Yeah, so even if you don't finish the book, like, I still get paid for the pages you read. You don't. It's not that you have to read the whole book. It's just that if you do read the whole book, then we get paid the maximum we can get paid, right? Every page you don't finish is a page we don't get paid for. Yes. That is my understanding, as long as you get to the star rating page. I'm considering popping East of the Sun back into KU in the future, just for a little while, just for 3 months, so I can run some. Once I have like a couple more books in the series, I'll do it, probably, because I'd like to run some free book promotions on it, and it's harder to make the book free. I don't want to make the book perma-free. It's just not my thing. Maybe after I've got 20 books out, then I'll think about making my first book perma-free. Until then, it just feels like devaluation of my work. And there's a lot of split opinions on that in the writing world. All right. Alright, so there we go, and I'm going to grab a little bit of white and mix it with my gray and do a couple of highlights on this lantern. There. Trying to figure out how I want to do this, because it's like with light coming out, you really have to darken all the lattice work, really. This is why I'm not a fan of this lantern. I guess I will darken it. I'll add a little bit more of my brown liner to my gray. Drop it down a bit. Gotta watch our time too, since I have my coaching at noon, and I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna try darkening down some of these thin struts. Yeah. I think that's a little better, darkening them down. That's better. There we go, just a little bit more light. There. This is more of a dark, so I might keep that dark. We'll hold that there. If I need to do it again, I can. Alrighty. Boop-a-doo. So we got that lantern lit up. We got the book pages lit up. I will do a little bit of a glow onto the wing here, but that's the only glow. I don't think the glow is going to actually go to her hair because everything else is too light. The glow from this lantern is so small it's not going to reach her hair. So yeah, now she's coming together a little bit better. We still have a lot of things to do down here, but the wings are there. Probably I want to do the gold. Thinking I might want to do the gold next because I want to get her upper jewelry done and stuff too. But yeah, she's coming along. She's coming along. Sweet. Thanks everybody. I hope you had fun with this stream. Tomorrow, one second. Boop. Tomorrow is, oh yeah, Hair Dude. It's Hair Dude. And now I have to remember what color I wanted him to be. Because I was like, okay, he's rogue, but I don't remember. Do you guys remember? Thanks, Turgeon. Yeah, I'm getting closer and closer to the end of the book now. Yes, he is definitely. He'll be the Black Rabbit of Inley. I can't remember what color I wanted his hood to be, though. I'm, like, totally stuck. I think you guys mostly wanted blue on him. Yeah, no, you voted on a different one. You voted on the halfling, I think, for the Naga green, because I made a note of it. I think I just got comments from the peanut gallery for this guy, but he's a mage thief, so I'll figure something out. Yeah, we're going to do a Silver Martin rabbit pattern on him. Yeah, I wanted to do, I wanted to make him very much a rogue mage, so we'll have to think about it. I might have gone. I have to look at the other colors I've been using. The problem is I'm pretty much using every color these days. Like, there's no color that's really getting neglected. So he could be anything. Reds and blues. Yeah, that's what I thought too. Is that red and blue and black. Or I can make it a very dark blue. Maybe we'll use Nightmare Black. Well, except we can't really do it around his fur because he's so dark. Yeah, I remember that I asked you guys because I knew he was going to be dark no matter what, so... Yeah, blue is coming to my head. I think Hyper Bunny, I think you're right. Blue. And we could definitely use orange as an accent for a mage. Yeah, we'll think about it. It's a new day. I have new brain cells. But yeah, so I think I was looking at blue. We don't really have a blue thing other than Elf with her blue hair. We haven't actually done blue in a while. Except for the Librarian. Or Jolie. But that was a long time ago. Like, we only just recently came back to her. So, yeah, we'll think about it. But yeah, we haven't done blue in a while. This is the closest we've done, and this is an indigo. Oh, I could go to the VOD, but I'm like, Tell you what, Hyper. Go to the VOD, find out for me, and report back tomorrow, alright? So I can run and get Kiki on her walk and get back in time for my coaching. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Quindy, for wrangling the cats. Thank you all for the discussion. Thank you for telling me that Olden Demon exists. And yeah, I'll see you guys tomorrow. All right. Have a great one. Bye-bye, everybody.